I remember staring at my screen, the cursor blinking mockingly on a blank page. It was 3 in the morning, and the world outside my window was quiet, but inside my head, it was a hurricane. This project, this one single project, had become my entire world. It started with so much excitement, a spark of an idea that I thought was brilliant. I poured everything into it, my time, my energy, my passion. It was supposed to be my masterpiece, the thing that would finally prove what? I wasn't even sure anymore. All I knew was the mounting pressure. It was like a physical weight on my chest. Every email, every meeting, every small piece of feedback felt like another stone being added to the pile. I'd tell myself, just a little more, push a little harder. It has to be perfect. Perfection. That was the goal, wasn't it? But perfection is a cruel mirage. The closer you think you're getting, the further it recedes, leaving you exhausted and lost in a desert of your own making. My internal monologue became a relentless critic. This isn't good enough. You're not good enough. Everyone else is moving forward, and you're stuck. You're going to fail, and everyone will see. I started avoiding calls from friends. I'd skip meals, telling myself I didn't have time. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, and when I did manage to close my eyes, my dreams were just reruns of my anxieties, filled with error messages and disappointed faces. I was living in a self-imposed prison, and the project was both the warden and the bars on the window. I convinced myself that this suffering was necessary, that it was the price of ambition. But really, I was just burning out, flickering like a candle in a storm. The turning point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it so clearly because the sun was streaming through the window and I hadn't really noticed the weather in weeks. My phone rang, and it was a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. I almost ignored it, my finger hovering over the decline button. The familiar voice of my internal critic whispered, "You don't have time for this. Get back to work." But for some reason, maybe just sheer exhaustion, I answered. "Hey," he said, "I was just thinking about you. How are you?" That simple question, "How are you?" It broke something open inside me. I tried to give the usual answer, "Oh, busy but good." But the words felt hollow, a lie I couldn't bring myself to tell one more time. So I hesitated. And in that silence, he must have heard everything. He didn't push, he just waited. And then I started talking, really talking. I told him about the project, the pressure, the sleepless nights. I told him how I felt like I was drowning, how I was so scared of failing that I couldn't even move forward. I expected him to offer solutions, to tell me to just power through, or give me a pep talk. But he didn't. He just listened. When I finally ran out of words, there was a brief pause. Then he said something that completely changed my perspective. He said, "It sounds like you're treating this project like it's your whole identity. But it's not. It's just a project. It's something you're doing, not who you are." It was so simple, so obvious, but it hit me like a lightning bolt. All this time, I had fused my self-worth to the outcome of this one thing. Its success was my success. Its failure was my failure. I had forgotten that I exist outside of my work. I am a friend, a son, a person who loves hiking and stupid comedies and trying new recipes. I am not just a title or a deliverable. He continued, "What's the worst that could happen? Seriously, if it's not perfect, if it fails, what happens? Will the world end? Will you lose the people who actually care about you?" And of course, the answer was no. The world would keep spinning. My friends would still be my friends. The catastrophe I had built up in my mind was an illusion. The stakes were only as high as I had made them. We talked for a little longer, but that was the core of it. After we hung up, I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, the sunlight warming my face. I didn't go back to the computer. Instead, I went outside. I walked to a nearby park and just sat on a bench, watching people walk their dogs, watching kids play. I took a deep breath, a real deep breath that filled my lungs, and it felt like the first one I had taken in months. That evening, I opened my laptop again, but something was different. The fear was gone. The crushing weight had lifted. I looked at the project not as a reflection of my entire being, but as what it was, a task, an interesting, challenging task, but just a task. The feeling of letting go was profound. It wasn't about giving up. It was about giving up the unrealistic expectations, the toxic attachment to a specific outcome. It was a release. I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I'd lost. It was like I had been trying to carry an ocean in a bucket, and I finally just set the bucket down and decided to appreciate the vastness of the sea from the shore. I started working again, but with a new mindset. I set boundaries. I worked during the day, and in the evening I stopped. I called my friends back. I cooked dinner. I slept. And a funny thing happened. The work got better. With a clear mind, free from the panic and the pressure, the ideas started to flow again. The creativity that had been smothered by anxiety finally had room to breathe. I was more productive in a few focused hours than I had been in entire sleepless nights. The project eventually got done. It wasn't perfect, not by the impossible standards I had once set for myself. But it was good. It was something I was proud of. And more importantly, I was proud of myself for how I got it done. I had learned a lesson far more valuable than anything the project itself could have taught me. I learned that our work is part of our life, but it is not our whole life. Our worth is not measured by our productivity or our successes. It's inherent. Letting go isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of strength, an act of self-preservation. It's understanding what you can control and what you can't, and finding peace in that distinction. If you're out there feeling buried under the weight of your own expectations, remember to breathe. Take a step back. Call a friend. Remember who you are outside of what you do. The world won't end if you take a break. In fact, you might just find that's when your world truly begins to open up. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and join our community. Take care of yourselves.